Okay, we're just continuing with halachot. The Siman Samech Gimel. Right after we spoke about yesterday, why is there no din of shlichut that once a person accepts upon himself Shabbat, so therefore they're allowed to continue and they could ask another Jew to perform for them a melacha, as long as that Jew did not obviously accept upon himself Shabbat. And we said that that's going to be continuing. The same melacha would apply to a non-Jew, which means that if you could come and you could ask a Jew to do a melacha for you, so then all the more so you're allowed to ask a non-Jew to do a melacha for you. So here it says that it's going to say when a person is going to be Magdim Shabbat, you're allowed to ask your friend to do a melacha. Huadin, you're allowed to ask a non-Jew to do a melacha until the Shekiyat HaChamah. And only if it's going to be the time where Kol HaTzibur, which means the entire tzibur accept upon themselves Shabbat, now it's going to be prohibited to come and to ask them, unless it's going to be obviously for a mitzvah and other things of that, which we will speak about, which is going to be during Min HaShmashot, or others where you will see that you're going to be permitted to ask a non-Jew to do a melacha. This is going to be for Letzorech HaShabbat. But this is even if it's not Letzorech Shabbat, as long as the majority tzibur did not accept upon themselves Shabbat, just like you're allowed to ask a Jew to do a melacha, so too you're allowed to ask a non-Jew to do a melacha. The last halakha, which is very interesting, is what about your family members? Meaning you've come to the first minyan, and let's say you're going to have that your family members are going to go, whether it's going to be a later minyan or it's even your wife. So here it says as follows: somebody that's going to accept upon himself Shabbat, he's allowed to tell his friend afterwards that did not accept upon himself Shabbat to do a melacha. Hu adin, the same halakha would apply that you're allowed to tell also beno bito aktanim, whether it's going to be your younger children to do a melacha. And mutar lomar liishto shetaaseh avuro melacha. You could even tell your wife to do a melacha for you, as long as she did not accept upon herself the Shabbat. So here the halakha brura brings down a chavot yair. The chavot yair wanted to say that your wife and children, they go after you, which means the second that you accept upon yourself Shabbat, so then your wife and children are automatically accepting Shabbat with them. However, though, he comes and he brings down a lot of poskim that we do not say that basically that you're not going to be nigrad afterwards, which means, if you remember, we've already brought this down to do with Machloket Rav Vosner and Rav Moshe Feinstein. Rav Vosner says that the second that a person comes and he accepts upon himself Shabbat, it's not because he holds that that's the halacha. It's just for logistics. It's that he wants to do an early Shabbat, so that way afterwards they would be able to come and to have an early meal. So therefore it's not mitzad halacha. So he comes and he says, once it's like that, there's no problem whatsoever that they would be able to do a melacha for him afterwards as well. He does say that there's a shita also of Rav Eliashiv, that he says that it's ra'ui lachmir to do a shvitat beno, and that's also brought down in the Igrot Moshe. However, though, again, as we already brought down, the Shevet Levi brings down that there's no problem whatsoever, that whether it's going to be your wife is not acquired to you, right? And it's not compared to an Eved or a Katan, which is doing Aldat Aviv, which means that at the end of the day, your wife has her own choice, and therefore she's allowed to choose to do the Shabbat afterwards. So therefore, if it's going to be in such a fashion, you're allowed to come and you're allowed to ask whether it's going to be your wife or a child to do a melacha for you. There's no problem. We did mention in the past that it is proper that they should accept upon themselves Shabbat a few minutes before you come home. So therefore it's not that you're coming home after the first minyan and all of a sudden they're coming and they're running around doing all these melachot. But mitzad halacha, let's say for example you would be on the way home and you would have to tell one of your children to come and to do a melacha, there is no isur whatsoever, because again, the same melacha applies to your children, would apply to your friend, or would apply to a goy, that even though you accepted upon yourself Shabbat, you're allowed to ask them to do Shabbat as well, to do a melacha as well.